Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up, man up, or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show and thanks for listening. Before I introduce today's guest, and I'm really excited to be talking with him today, I just want to take a moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now and you might be ready to start taking action on becoming a better father, better man, more fit. I urge you to join our brotherhood. So the best way to do that right now is to apply to our free private Facebook group, and you can find that at facebook.com/groups/FitDadBaseCamp. So, my guest today, his name is Pat Rigsby. Pat's a father of two boys. He's a husband, entrepreneur, speaker, author, and coach. He's been featured in publications such as Entrepreneur, Men's Health, and USA Today. And I have a lot of respect for him, not only as a business owner, but as a person. And I'll share with you why in just a second. So, Pat, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Man, it's my pleasure to be here. I love what you're doing, and certainly as a dad, as a stepdad, and as a guy who's trying to kind of find that rhythm between professional success and personal success and fatherhood. I think this is just such a great thing.
Cool, man. I appreciate that. So before we get into your background a little bit, I just want to share a story with everybody about how we first met, and you probably won't even remember this. This was about 8 years ago. So I was running a fitness boot camp in downtown in my area here, and I was kind of struggling to make it grow, and I had found your stuff. I had been reading some of your stuff, and I reached out to you. I sent you an email, and I said, hey, Pat, this is what I'm trying to do. I'd love to, hear your thoughts on maybe how I could grow my boot camp. And you replied and said, you know what, man, let's just jump on a call. And I was kind of like, really? Okay. So I remember I was sitting in the parking lot of Anytime Fitness where I was training. And you called me and we chatted for almost an hour. And you were just sharing everything that you could to help me. And you never asked for a sale. You never asked for anything. And I still remember this vividly. I've been in touch with hundreds or thousands of fitness people, marketers, but very few do I remember. And I think this is kind of indicative of how you run your business. It's all about the relationships, and you truly, and a lot of people will say this, but you truly want to help people. You're not an internet marketer, although you've had tremendous success in that field. In my opinion, you're just one of the really good guys in this business.
Wow. Thank you, first and foremost. I think that I take a pretty simplistic approach to most things, and kind of one of the things that I focus on just in life as a whole is creating and building stronger relationships. And I don't really worry a whole lot about kind of itemizing those and thinking what's in it for me, as much as, the better my relationships are and the more strong relationships I have, everything else kind of takes care of itself. And that starts internally in my own household. The better my relationships are there, the kids tend to be a little bit happier, a little bit more successful in whatever they're pursuing. My wife's happier and probably better off in the things that she's pursuing, and everything outside kind of works the same way. So I don't know that much of anything I do is complicated, but I think that this stuff, it shouldn't be complicated. It's just like, man, treat people well, and eventually you probably are going to reap some benefits from that down the line. I don't know that you need to put a stopwatch on it or anything, but it'll show up, at least in my experience.
Well, it's definitely worked for you. I know you've built multiple highly successful multi-million-dollar businesses, many in the fitness space. But before we get into all that, I have a bunch of questions for you. Maybe just tell us a little bit about how you got started and how you ended up where you're at now.
Oh gosh, my career-wise, my first career was, I think of my kind of professional life in kind of version 1, 2, and 3. Version 1 was me as a college baseball coach, college strength and conditioning coach, and then also as like an instructor at the university. I had a kind of a good opportunity to become a college baseball coach at the ripe old age of 23. So I was the youngest head coach in the country. But the drawback to that is they don't give good jobs like that to 23-year-olds. They give jobs sometimes like that to 23-year-olds, but not good ones. So, at that point in my life, I was single, didn't have any kids, and really kind of poured my heart and soul into making that program successful, because it certainly wasn't at that point, and we did pretty well. But along the way, I figured out that I wanted to maybe be in a position where I didn't have to answer so much to a bunch of higher ups. It was a state university, so not only did we have the bureaucracy of a university, but then we had kind of the whole navigating state funding and all of that. And it just there were just things about it that didn't necessarily fit my personality. So I got into like career version 2.0. I got into the fitness industry and opened up a small personal training business that ended up growing pretty rapidly, did pretty well, really applying a lot of the same stuff that I had learned as a baseball coach, both from recruiting and from developing players and developing coaches. So that went well, opened up a second location, and then started coaching other business owners on just some of the things that had worked for me. And that whole thing just snowballed to the point where there were a bunch of kind of spin-off businesses where there was like this one parent company that owned 2 franchise organizations with about 300 locations total, equipment companies, certification companies, even at one point like a food company that shipped healthy meals across the country, that sort of stuff. And then it just got to the point that it was a lot. I felt like sometimes I was the parent to 40 employees in addition to being a dad at home. And it felt like, my business is running a little too much of my life instead of the other way around. And so I sold all that and started what I do now, which is just business coaching and consulting for entrepreneurs who want to build what I call their ideal business, something that's very lifestyle friendly, that really allows people to kind of enjoy a mix of professional and personal success simultaneously. So kind of a long-winded answer there, but that's kind of me in in a short clip, I guess.
Got it. So, I invited you on this show, because you're an expert in building businesses, and so many dads in our community would love nothing more than to be their own boss and to do what they're best at and to do what they love every day. Me personally, I'm fortunate enough to have been able to walk away from my career in finance. I hated it. I was in there for 11 and a half years. After I was separated and divorced, I decided to make a life change, another one, and I left the career and started, and it's been about 4 years now. And, I'm in a unique position. I get to wake up every day on my schedule, and I truly get to do what I love. And it's so frustrating for me, and I feel really strongly about it, watching other people, not just dads, but other people suffer, because life is just too short to be miserable and unhappy. And most people are just grinding out their jobs. And, I wanted to talk to you today about how a dad who's working a full-time job, has a couple of kids, a long commute, hectic life, the typical busy dad, on how to build not just any business, but an online business specifically, because it's so much easier to get into. There's such a low barrier to entry. So I really want to focus on that today, and I think it will help a lot of guys kind of get an idea of what it takes to start and get it up and running and eventually be successful at a business like you coach, something that you love to do.
So the way that I'm going to kind of, I guess, walk through this is probably going to sound very, very simple. And I want to preface it by saying that simple is not the same thing as easy. Something that you and I had talked about before we actually jumped on the podcast was that, a lot of times the way that I approach things maybe comes across as being simple. I don't process overly complex things well. So I always look for kind of the easiest way to understand a concept. And, the way that I'm going to present this is the exact same way that I think about every business that I own or have ever owned. And, it's kind of this 3-unit approach. I think you have to be able to identify who you want to help. I mean, really all we're doing, and when we start a business, we're solving a problem for somebody. Doesn't matter if it's me solving the problem of building a successful business or helping to solve a problem of that for entrepreneurs, if it's you working with dads trying to stay fit and healthy and be kind of the best version of themselves and be a great role model for their kids. Doesn't matter if it's a restaurant solving the problem of, hey, I don't have time to cook dinner tonight, and I still want to be able to eat something that I'm going to enjoy and feed my family. So all businesses are solving a problem. So you have to figure out, like, what problem am I good at solving? Do I have some experience in solving? Would I like to help other people solve? Maybe you've been a successful youth football coach and you want to mentor other youth football coaches in how to run effective practices, how to be a great mentor for young men, how to, how to navigate all the variables that go into building a successful youth football program. Maybe you have some experience. It doesn't really matter what it could be. If it's something that you've done professionally and you've had success with, you teach other professionals the same thing. That's how I got started online. My little local business was doing really well, and other people want to know what we were doing, so I just packaged it up and shared it with them. But I've consulted with college baseball programs, sharing things about recruiting and fundraising and just building a program that functions a little bit like a high performing business. So whatever you've had some experience in, whatever you've had some success in and enjoyed, there are other people who could benefit from that, right? So the first unit in building a business is, how do we attract those people? How do we get them to raise their hand and say, look, I'd like some help on this? Think it could be restoring cars or buying houses and flipping them or whatever else. There's always somebody out there that would say, man, I would like to learn how to shortcut this and do it better and not struggle in it. So how do you attract those people? And then they've raised their hand. They say, look, I'm kind of interested in this. So you go to what I consider as like unit 2 is the conversion unit. How do I take them from being interested to ready to become my customer or client. And a lot of that just has to be following up with them, sending emails or doing Facebook videos or getting on the phone with them and just helping them understand that, yes, you in fact are somebody they can trust to help them go from where they are to where they want to be. And again, that sounds really simple, but we could walk through any business and I can show you how this kind of lays over any business model that exists today. And then the third unit is, how do I give them this dream come true result that just solves their problems, makes them happy? So that's the area that you're the expertise, or that you have the expertise in, the stuff that you are already good at. And to me, any business is really just kind of saying, how do I take what I know, what I'm good at, what I've experienced, and fill in those three boxes? If I can do that, and I can do it in a way that is profitable for the time that I want to put into it, then I've got a business that, you know, maybe it's a little kind of side business to be able to help people fund a vacation or buy their first home. Or maybe it's something they scale and turn into a full-on career that, if it's online, you know, I mean, I think that online certainly gets the phrase or the word freedom thrown around, and it's more about flexibility, right? Like, you're not free from the obligation of helping the people that are paying you. You just have the flexibility as to when and how and where you do it. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of it. So how can I help you kind of unpack that?
Right. Okay. So obviously those three things go very deep, and yes, at a very broad level, it's simple, but I think, and I'm just speaking from personal experience. I've been doing this for 4 years now, full time. I overcomplicate things, and I think mainly that's because every coach, guru, program, course person that's, selling this stuff has a different method of, being successful online. And, I'm no different than most people, where you get caught up in different methodologies and you try it doesn't work, you try something else, doesn't work. And before you know, you're just frustrated and pulling your hair out, and like, you've spent tens of thousands of dollars, you're still, barely better off. And it is complicated at the, on that level, because, everywhere you look, it's, buy my program, do it this way, do it that way. You have to have a huge Instagram following, you have to have this, the money's in the list. And so, people don't know where to start. And I've hired so many people, copywriters, coaches, and ad guys and graphics guys, ClickFunnels experts. I mean, you name it. And at the end of the day, it's really not changed, my business a great deal. And so I mentioned this before we started recording. I said, every time I watch your stuff or I listen to your stuff, it just reminds me that it's not that complicated, because the way you approach things in business, and I'm sure it doesn't hurt that you have that slow Southern drawl that makes everything sound so easy. But I'm like, maybe it's not so bad, and so that's what I'm trying to break through, not for myself, but, someone that's trying to break into the online business. I mean, like, there's so many ways being taught that I think a lot of guys and a lot of people are just turned off. Like, it's just too much. I had a call yesterday. A guy from one of my groups said, man, I'm just getting out of the military. I have a ton of passion for helping people in a certain way. I just don't know what to do. And more than anything, he wanted to just hear my voice and hear me say, you can do it because I did it. And I think, that piece of that little confidence, maybe carry him to take the next step and really start research on who does he really want to help. Like you mentioned earlier, that's exactly what I told him. Who do you want to help? Who exactly do you want to help? So, for the busy dad, let's just say they have an interest in the fitness space. And I have a guy, he's in one of my groups, he's a friend of mine, and a very active member of one of my groups. He is an engineer, and it's okay, but his real passion is coaching kids like in a strength and conditioning capacity. So he's been helping out at like lacrosse camps. He's been running little programs. He's going to get his certification. He's working on it, on the side. So, how would you approach that? Let's say he wants to get his name out there, start creating a resource and become kind of the authority in his area, at least anyway, for a strength and conditioning guy, for kids 14 years old that are playing lacrosse.
Well, that's perfect, right? So, one of the things that I think muddies the water for people is all those things that you talked about, the funnels and the Instagram stuff and everything else they're just kind of tactical pieces or tools that fit into those three kind of boxes that I talked about. So you have to pick the right tool that you want to use in the box, right? So if I were going to go say, okay, that's my target market with lacrosse, the first place we've already figured out who he wants to help, then we have to figure out where they are. Right. So is he going to reach out to them locally? Well, if he knows where they are locally, which it sounds like he already does, you can go to the coaches, you can go to the lacrosse clubs, and you can connect with people that way, figuring out a way to add value to what they're doing. And it could be doing some performance testing, or kind of like the football equivalent to having combines, right? You could be just offering to help do some sort of fundraiser for them, something where you're connecting with them, and the people that control that audience, the club directors, the coaches, let you in the door. Online, where are those people at? Probably watching videos somewhere, right? Like YouTube, Instagram, something like that. So how can you create some compelling videos that get their attention? They say, man, I'd like to learn more about what this guy has to offer. It sounds like he can help me. So once we do that, we have to have a means to get them to raise their hand and say, I'm interested enough that I'm willing to give you some of my attention in an ongoing way. Now, that could be them scheduling a time to do an assessment, like he could take them through some sort of movement screen or performance evaluation. It could be, if they didn't live near him, he could do a video call with them and get to know them and learn about their goals, and like, hey, is your goal to play in college? What do you think's holding you back? But identify where they want to go, what's holding them back, and help them understand how he can be of service, how he can help get them from where they are to where they want to be. Now, if they're not ready to jump on a video call or come in for a consultation immediately, then he could send them some follow-up, some social proof, like, hey, here's a case study of a kid that I helped that got a scholarship to go play at Virginia. Here's a case study of a kid that didn't make his high school varsity team as a sophomore, but now he's a starter as a senior. And so you got some of this social proof for them. Or he could offer some tips up or some drills that, might help people be a little quicker or be a little bit stronger, something that they can see like potentially offers them a tangible benefit. And then he continues to try to move that relationship forward. So to the point where they engage and say, yeah, I'd love to see if you can help me and kind of be a partner in me reaching my goals. Then at that point, they talk about how he can help, and then he moves to unit 3. He's got to actually deliver that result they're looking for. So some of that is figuring out, okay, does he want to do one-on-one? Does he want to do group training? Is it all going to be virtual? Is it going to be in person? So you're figuring out what you're going to deliver, how you're going to deliver it, and what that should cost. And that's it. Like that's the business. And if he wants to take on 5 kids that he's training after school and he's charging each of them $200 a month, then he's got a side business that's paying him an extra $1,000 a month, which can pay for a vacation, can certainly go in a kid's college fund. It can, create a little bit of breathing room for somebody. But if he wants to make that a full-time business, then, he's probably going to have to get a space or figure out how to train people in a higher volume format online. And maybe over time might even have to hire help, but that's only when the demand for what he's doing is such that it exceeds the supply of the time he's got available. So that's it. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. And frankly, that business model, I've watched that same business model work with youth sports coaches left and right. Man, it's simple, but it's super effective.
All right. So what about somebody that's going into a 100% online business, but in a super competitive niche like fitness for moms? So take, for example, your wife, right? She runs Fit Yummy Mummy. She's doing a great job there. But how do you stand out in a crowd where you've got thousands and thousands of fit moms or fit women like your wife, all looking for attention? They're all trying to get eyeballs. They all want to help moms. How do you rise above that just by, taking that simplistic approach, the relationship marketing approach? I feel like that's when all the I won't call them tricks, but that's when all the marketing stuff comes into play, where you kind of have to stand out by, either being different or, in some cases, which I just absolutely detest, like on Instagram, people are just doing the dumbest shit to get eyeballs. Like, I'm going to do pull-ups off of a side of a cliff, and if I fall, I die. Like, people will do anything for eyeballs. But, that's certainly not your approach. So how does somebody, like your wife, who is up against that's a massively crowded niche, how does she succeed above everybody else? Or in addition to, I guess maybe, how does she not get lost in the crowd?
Well, in her case, it's probably not the easiest thing to model, simply because she was one of the first to start to deliver like an ebook like that online. Most of the people with the top selling products at the time were not only men, but they were like single guys selling to moms. And so all she had to do was just show up differently by being a mom. But I think that lends itself to where the opportunity is. The key, I think, is figuring out how you can do one or more of those units differently than everybody else is doing them. So let me give you a kind of a practical example. So if you wanted to attract moms, well, mom's pretty big market, right? And we can narrow it if we want. It could be working moms. It could be stay-at-home moms. It could be moms of homeschooled children, moms who maybe maybe are diabetic. It could be moms who have never worked out before and are really kind of first-time exercisers. But we want to narrow the field more so we can speak directly to someone, because one of the keys here is you speaking so clearly to this one person. They're like, man, this is finally what I'm looking for. This person is speaking directly to me as if we're in a room together alone. And you can always expand, right? Like you can always go from being the person who works with homeschool moms to the person who works with moms of elementary and middle school age children. So you can always scale it out, but better to be narrow and get some traction than to get lost in kind of the sea. And I think that if you take that approach, and then, you know, the other way that you can be different, if we think about this in a local business sense, I mean, if everybody's doing group training, do semi-private training, do one-on-one training. If we're talking online, if everybody has a membership site, do one-on-one coaching, do stuff where you're going to text people. I mean, I know a guy that I've done a couple coaching calls with, that his online coaching business is basically about accountability. They text you every day to check in on you. And he's got a business that does 7 figures, but it's just different than everybody else's approach to online coaching. So find a way that you can speak to somebody and be a little more narrow in who you're speaking to, that maybe you're following up differently, and maybe you solve the problem a little bit differently than people do. So if in doubt, go narrower and be different.
Okay. I mean, I've heard that many times, but I've also heard from quote unquote experts that, you know, try to appeal to more people. It's too narrow, which I never bought into that. But
I mean, that's a surefire way to go bankrupt.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Because if you go too wide, you're never. I mean, we live in a society where attention is so hard to come by because there's so many things tugging at it. So if you've got somebody's attention for 5 to 10 seconds online, they have to think that you're really speaking to them. I mean, yeah, you can be kind of the circus act hanging off the side of the cliff doing pull-ups, like you said, but nobody looks at that person and says, I want that person to be my coach. They look at that person and say, that person's insane. And people don't pay insane people. So better to say, I'm going to start narrower. I'm going to get some traction. And then some of the time you just reinvest some of your winnings, right? Like you have some credibility now, so you can go a little bit wider. You have some revenue coming in, so you can reinvest some of that in scaling instead of having to start in a much riskier position by going wide and competing against the people who are spending $30,000 or $40,000 a day on ad budgets, like some of my friends do.
Man. So let me ask you this. So I'll use my business as an example in this scenario here. We're talking about narrowing down a niche. So when I started, I was working only with single dads. So I had come out of a divorce, separation. My life fell apart. I was a mess. And it was through fitness that I turned my life around. You know, I was in a really dark place, being away from my daughters. And so I ended up, you know, turning my life around 180 degrees. And that's what prompted me, one of the things, to quit my job and pursue my passion for helping people through fitness. And so, you know, I started this business for single dads, and I put everything I had into it, every dollar I had, every moment I had, building this brand. And after about 1.5 years, I remember I had hired a guy, and I paid him $3,000 for 2 weeks worth of work. He was this highfalutin consultant, you know, supposed to help me kill it in my business. And after the 2 weeks, he called me and said, dude, you're screwed. He's like, this niche is going to bankrupt you, because as much as you're helping these guys, as great as this is for you and for them, many of these dads are not in a position to help themselves. You know, they're not ready to invest in themselves. Therefore, you know, they're not going to pay you. So while it may feel good for you and you're helping a lot of guys, it's going to be very hard for you to build a business, which is why nobody else is doing it either, you know, because I was kind of, you know, as far as I could tell, really the only one that was really going after this market. So it was a really tough thing to digest. You know, I didn't want to believe it, but I ended up rebranding to Fit Dad Nation and, you know, broadened it up quite a bit. And I don't know if you would look at that, because going after all dads, I mean, it's not all dads. I mean, typically it's the 35 to 45-year-old dad that I work with, but that's become a huge market now, right? There's so many dad sites popping up and anti-dad bods and all that stuff. I mean, in your opinion, do you think the dad market is still too broad, or is that narrow enough to stand out and do really well without even digging deeper into, let's call it, white collar dads or guys that sit at desks all day long or whatever it is?
So there are two different ways to narrow a market. And I think you have to choose one or the other. You can narrow a market by narrowing the population that you're trying to reach. Like, hey, I'm going to serve divorced dads, or I'm going to serve white collar dads, or whatever else. Or the way that I tend to narrow maybe a little bit more is narrow by message. And, for my wife, one of the things she narrowed through was saying 15-minute workouts you can do in the comfort of your own home. Right. So it wasn't like she was able to narrow down by just saying my message is about getting the body you want or feeling and looking the way you want in the time you have. So everything just kind of repeated a theme of that message. Like with me, I talk a lot about creating your ideal business. There are a lot of people that do business coaching in the fitness industry, but a lot of times it's about tactics. It's about running a challenge or Facebook ads or something. And instead, my message is, look, I want to help you build a business that allows you to kind of commingle personal and professional success. And that's my message. And so certain people are going to be kind of magnetically attracted to that, and other people aren't. See, so think about in the dad landscape, two different ways somebody could approach messaging. They could do the whole, hey, don't have the dad bod, and this is about you having six pack and all that other stuff, versus a different way to message could be, hey, is the way I'm approaching my life something I'd want my kids to model? And, maybe thinking of that as a dad first, not as a guy who wants six-pack abs who happens to have kids first. There are just different ways that I think you can shape a message to get people to say, look, no, that's my guy. That's who I want to listen to. So it doesn't always have to be narrowing by demographic. Sometimes it's just narrowing by message.
It's interesting because, my ideal client, the person that I work best with is, like a 40-something-year-old white-collar guy who doesn't know a lot about his body, doesn't really understand how, nutrition works, and how, he probably hasn't spent a lot of time in the gym, is overweight, doesn't move very well, and really needs someone to kind of walk him through the steps of getting started, keeping him motivated, keeping him accountable, right? So that's the person that I can help the most. But it's funny because in my groups, I attract a lot of fit dads, and maybe it's just a matter of messaging. I can't help fit dads. They're already fit. A lot of these guys are doing CrossFit. They're already, doing what I'm doing, and they're not coaching other people, but, they have no need for what I do. So I can't help them. They're just, they're part of the community, which is fine. But, maybe you're right. Maybe it's just a matter of what I'm putting out there, or for anybody else, what they're putting out there. You're not attracting the exact person that you're looking for.
So through the current mechanism that you have in place, you can't help those guys who are already fit, but obviously they're joining this group because there's something that they do want to be better in their life. Maybe it's, how do I want to be around other dads who value fitness, but I want to be a better dad. I want to be a better role model for my kids. I want to, take a lot of the things that I value in fitness, the discipline, the embracing the challenge, all that stuff. I want to be able to be better at imparting those lessons on my children. So I'm not saying that's the direction you want to go, but something about you spoke to them and they reached out to you. So yeah, you may not necessarily be the person they need to show them a better way to do a split squat or something, but you may be the person who is somebody they can connect with to lead a more balanced or more kind of well-rounded life as a dad.
Yeah, I mean, that's it too. Just thinking about that, and a lot of what we do is community based. So yeah, guys join because they want to be around other guys that are sharing some of the same struggles. And like I said, not all of them are fit, but there's a good amount of a good number of guys in my groups that are already pretty fit. But yeah, it's being part of a brotherhood. It's being part of the community where we can share stuff. And I do have a membership program where it is, I guess, fitness based, but it's about becoming better in all areas of your life as a dad. And then I'm not looking for necessarily a certain type of person other than the caliber of man that comes into the group. I don't care if he's fit, fat, whatever. It's more about his character and will he add to the group? Will he benefit from the group? And that's what I'm doing now.
What's interesting is the running joke or the running commentary in my wife's group, so she had an ebook that she sold tens of thousands of copies of, right? Like the Fit Yummy Mummy ebook. But then people would join her membership site and they're like, you tricked me. You got me here with the workouts, but I'm here because you're my personal development coach, really. And that's what I think a lot of this boils down to, right? Because fitness and family and professional stuff, there is no fine black and white dividing line between all of it. It's kind of like, how do we become this better version of ourselves in all facets of our life? And if I can find a coach or a community that helps unlock that for me, then I'm going to gravitate to that. And that's something valuable to me. So, you may use fitness as the way that somebody enters into that relationship. But, when they do reach a level of fitness that they're happy about, odds are they're going to be really liking this ability to improve and this ability to feel this sense of accomplishment. And they're going to want to keep improving other areas of their life. So it's something that I think is a neat opportunity that you have at your hands.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, I love the approach of relationship based. Something that frustrates me, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, is everywhere you look, and I know you don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, but these Instagram coaches are everywhere. And, I don't even know how they have so many followers, a lot of these guys, but, basically they flash their six-pack abs. These are young guys for the most part, or girls. They throw up, a program coach, they're all online coaches. And it seems like many of them are making a killing. I mean, you don't know for sure, but
see what appearances can be deceiving. Let me kind of give you a thought on this. So I had a friend who had an Instagram celebrity send out a promotion for a collaboration they were doing, and this lady had well over 1 million Instagram followers. She sent out this paid program that they were doing in tandem, and got exactly 0 sales. And she promoted this very aggressively for 7 days. So just because somebody's willing to give you their attention doesn't necessarily mean they're willing to give you their hard-earned money. So sometimes you got to read between the lines and figure out, are they measuring their success based on the likes and the followers, or are they measuring their success on the stuff that that actually pays your mortgage and can pay for your vacation and some of these other.
Right, right. But we're led to believe that, large Instagram following specifically, can certainly lead to big numbers. And, I think it's easy for a lot of people to get sucked in. I mean, for a guy that's just starting out, maybe he wants to, his first thing is to start trying to market heavy on Instagram because, when you look at it and you start reading about, marketing, online marketing, starting a business, you're going to find something that says you need to have social media following. And it seems, like I said, looks can be deceiving. It seems like a lot of these people are making a lot of money just based on the fact that they're posting, these infographics every day, and they call themselves coaches and they look good, and I'm sure some are. I actually know some that are doing well, but I think it's easy to fall into that trap of, let's just make it a numbers game instead of a people game.
Well, think of it this way, right? Like, just because somebody, like, I grew up in a very, like, a small town where it wasn't uncommon to see somebody driving around in their brand new leased pickup truck and then pulling into a house that wasn't worth as much as the pickup truck. Or, we have to learn to separate, like, the sizzle from the steak. And if you're attracting an audience, are you following up with them in a way where they're willing to pay you for the result you can deliver? The audience is only important if they're willing to move through that continuum, because anybody who's done any research into, like, social media audiences, you can go buy followers for pennies. And the key here is, are you getting people who are genuinely interested in you, what you have to offer, and are willing to kind of move through that journey with you? Like, they're willing to learn more about you. They're willing to do some of that discovery. If we think about any purchase that we make of any significance, it basically starts with, hey, we're interested in this. I'm interested in buying a new car. So then I start to do a little bit of research. Maybe I ask some friends about their car. I stop at a couple car lots. I do some research online. I compare prices and reviews. And then I'm going to go test drive something and eventually make a purchase. Well, if somebody is interested and then they're willing to go through that kind of discovery process with you, then, we got a pretty good shot at, if what we offer is a fit for them, they're going to buy. But the number of people who indicate a passing interest doesn't directly correlate with the number of people who are actually willing to buy, because you can do a lot of things to manipulate interest, right? Like, you can show a little more flesh and manipulate interest. You can do something edgy and manipulate interest. It's a lot like when guys talk about email, they talk about open rates. Well, you'll see most of these things that get great open rates on emails have these very tricky headlines that don't correlate with the subject matter of the email. And yeah, that may get you a great open rate, but is it actually going to get you the trust of the prospect so that they become a buyer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I was just thinking about this as you were talking. And this came up in my conversation with this fella yesterday. And I think for those guys that are thinking about starting a new business and are kind of hesitant to get started, this guy said, I don't know if I'm going to be good enough. I don't know if I'm expert enough to take somebody's money. Like, and that's a big fear, right? Is, yeah, you're, and I said, you're things that other people don't, that they will pay you for, but like getting over that mental block of, well, I've never taken money for my services in X, Y, and Z. What makes me qualified? I don't have a certification. My degree isn't in such and such, and I think that's going to hold back a lot of people from just taking the next step, starting a website, put your name out there, publish something. Well, I'm not really an expert. So many more people are more qualified. How do you get over that hump?
I think that, you have to use a different measure of qualification than credentials or degrees or whatever else. I mean, I've had plenty of people that I've known that didn't finish high school that were millionaires, and I've had plenty of people that have been in my like subscribers or customers or client that had MBAs that had zero clue how to make money. So there's not really this direct correlation with the two. I mean, what you have to do is use a different way to determine your worth, and it's, can I help? Can I actually help this person achieve the dream come true result that they want? It doesn't really matter if other people can help more. It matters, can you help? That's all that matters, right? Because those other people that maybe can help more are irrelevant, because if this person likes you and trusts you, or maybe it's more convenient for them to work with you, as long as you can help them get the result they want and it's a valuable thing to them, they'll pay for it. So you just have to be willing to focus back on you and not all this external stuff. And that's probably a good kind of way to tie this all together, is so many of the things that you've shared that are obstacles are people focusing on all these outside variables that are well beyond their control and in many cases irrelevant, instead of focusing on, hey, who can I help? Where can I find them? And how can I get their interest and show them that I can help them get from where they are to where they want to be? I mean, that's all this boils down to. And if you get caught up in that comparison syndrome, like, keeping up with the Joneses, or worrying about what somebody else is doing on Instagram, or, hey, is this person more qualified than me? You're losing sight of the fact that, hey, there's this person over here who needs help that I can help a lot. And if we get together, instead of them having to look around and wonder and struggle and fail to get the result they want, we can actually get them there, and it's valuable to them, so they'll probably pay me for it.
Okay, good points. Good points. I just wanted to ask you one more thing, and it's just basically how to manage this. So, most dads that are busy, are thinking that one of their main issues is a lack of time. In one of your videos, you said, it's a perceived lack of time. It's not necessarily a lack of time, but, I'm curious to know, like in the beginning when you were, getting started, or even in the first, handful of years where you had all this stuff going on, how did you prioritize or manage your time, with a family and, everything else going on to make it all work?
I made a point to block out time in my schedule for my family. The same way, I was running a training business, so it just always was kind of at the forefront of my mind that if I can schedule an appointment with a person that I don't really know that well, but they're willing to pay me a little bit, then I can certainly schedule time with my wife, my kids, all that stuff. And I think that's number one. Number two is I was willing to work kind of odd hours. I still, to this day, like if we go on vacation, I like getting up early and working for an hour before other people get up, and then I'm on vacation with them and they never know the difference, but I have that kind of sense of accomplishment. And then I also feel like I'm not going home to a pile of stuff that's undone. So finding kind of off hours to work, hours where it's not disruptive to the quality time with your family, making sure that you are blocking out that quality time with your family. And then also accepting that it's okay to maybe push a little harder in short doses. And maybe like the biggest sellout I see from like dads is, I'm doing this for my family, and it turns into this kind of excuse to not spend time with their family. I'm working. That's great if it's a 6-month thing to get things moving, but if it's a 6-year thing, then you're doing it wrong. So, set some parameters and say, hey, I'm willing to maybe widen my guardrails for the time I'm working on my business for 6 months, and I'm going to push as hard as I can. And I've got a deadline, and I need to see some results. But just don't drift and stay cognizant of it all. And business is not super complicated. It just takes consistent action on the right stuff.
Got it. Well, this has been awesome. It's been helpful for me, and I certainly hope it's been helpful for those listening. So where do you want people to find you online, Pat?
The easiest place to find me is patrigsby.com, and I've got plenty of fun resources and tools and gifts and all that there where, if you are interested in building a business, whether or not it's in fitness, I help entrepreneurs in real estate. I've helped attorneys and doctors and you name it. I just tend to focus most on fitness, but all the stuff there would be relevant to anybody who's wanting to kind of move down that entrepreneurial track, but not let it kind of consume their life.
Sure. Awesome, man. Yeah, I appreciate your time. This has been awesome, man, and look forward to keeping in touch.
All right, man. Hey, my pleasure, and I will look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.